Yes, welcome all. Hello, Keith, Teresa, Judith. Yes, Shriyanimala, who else is coming in? Roger, hello. Yeah, Christine, Jeremy, welcome. Duncan, welcome. Just waiting for Simon and Finney to appear. Yeah, hello, Finney. Simon's just connecting.
I may have to leave early, but I'm sorry, I got something in my chair. I may have to leave early, but I will go quietly. Thank you very much. I'll enjoy.
You'll go quietly, will you, Finney? Okay, we'll be sorry to see you go, but that's okay. Hello, Kat. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Just waiting for Simon to connect. Hold on. Right, welcome, Simon. Paladin's just connecting. Hello, Paladin. Before we jump in, we're due to start with a recap of the Karaniametta Sutta, but there were a couple of points that arose. I think it was you, Simon, were talking about the form of the verb kairata. Oops. And can you just were you saying that it was an atmanepada form and a reflexive form?
I think that's what it had in the PED, but everywhere else it appeared the ATHA, the ata ending, is a second person plural, which seems to fit just about the meaning of that particular verse.
I'm glad you've come round to it without persuasion from me. It's the ta ending is fairly standard second person plural ending. Those of you who have Perniola, it's at paragraph 77 on page 85. So the standard form of the second person plural optative is labheata, and you can also have a shortened form labheta as well. But they both end with that standard ha ending, that second person plural ending. One thing, note for the unwary. I'm not suggesting that any of you are unwary, but I'm inviting you to note. Hang on, I'm just going to get my my air server going to share screen, desktop PC, iPad. Okay, I'm just going to share screen with you now. Screen one, share. I'm just trying to organize my gallery properly. Right, is screen one shared with the iPad? Good, thank you. Let's go back to our standard paradigm of verb. And I'm now just talking about our verb. Oops. Oof. What's gone wrong with it? Something's gone wrong with my. There we are. Oh, my electronic pen isn't quite working properly. So that's meant to be boo. My electronic pen was going funny. Now, I'm just going to look now at the second person plural, the you plural, you are and you be, the imperative. Now, note well.
Indeed.
Sorry, did somebody say something? Okay, as the Buddha would have said, Yoniso manasi karota. Mark well these words, bhikkhave, O monks. That you are, talking about plural here, in Sanskrit is bhavata. And you are, Richard Penn's gone funny. Why is it? I'm sorry about this. The pen's bit misbehaving. So they're the same. Second person plural, you. They both end in a ta. Now, trap for the unwary, which, okay, does not include any of you. But in Sanskrit, the imperative, so this pen is not doing what it should. In Sanskrit, the imperative plural is a ta, an unaspirated ta, not a ta. Whereas in Pali, it is the same as the indicative. That's the trap for the unwary. Welcome, Mariano. Anyway, you will find that this ta ending throughout in Pali, throughout the indicative and imperative and optative, is the aspirated ta ending. So there's nothing odd about lapayata. It is the very ordinary second person plural optative. The other one we discussed was dhyami, as in samadhyami. And I felt slightly disappointed. I'm not sure whether to be disappointed with myself or with the writers of the grammar books, but I couldn't immediately get a straight answer. So I'm going to have another go. So that one will have to be left in. What exactly is how do we get to dia from dadami to dhyami? I kind of intuitively know, but I couldn't find a direct and straight answer in the grammar book. So I will come back to you on that one. I'm sorry, there were two other things I was going to get back to you on. One is a very interesting observation that Simon sent to me in connection with the Metta Sutta, and the other was the Brahma Viharas, that passage that Paladin identified from the Visuddhimagga. With the email that goes out after this lesson, I will send some of the material that Simon sent me. We'll look at it right now, actually. And I really hope during the course of the week, I'll do a textual analysis of Paladin's bit from the Visuddhimagga. So let us now recap the Karaniya Metta Sutta, verse 8 we were on. Let me just call it up. Here we are. Okay, has it appeared on screen? Good, thank you. Actually, before we go to verse 8, let's just look at verse 7. It's in connection with this that there was the interesting point that Simon sent. It's this one. Mata yatha niyam puttamayusa eka puttam anurakhe evam pisababhutesu manasam bhavaye aparimanam. So, mata yatha, just as a mother, anurakhe would protect niyam puttam, her own child, eka puttam, her only child, ayusa, with her life, evampi, in exactly the same way, bhavaye, one should develop, one should cultivate. Let me just ignore this. one should cultivate a manasam, a mentality, aparimanam, boundless, unbounded. We can make up the word unperimetered. So unperimetered without a boundary line would be exactly cognate with aparimanam, sababhutesu. And the question was, and there's been some interesting argument, whether this is meant to mean that we should love every single living being in the same way that the mother loves her only child, protects her only child, or whether, which is a bit of a tall order actually, or whether, to put it mildly, or whether it means that we should cultivate and safeguard our own Brahmavihara of metta. That's what we should be cultivating, our inner metta, cultivating that Brahmavihara in the same way that the mother, with that same care and love that the mother devotes towards her only son, which is, okay, might be a bit of a tall order, but a lot less of a tall order than the first one, and something that can usefully be done, in my little opinion. I tend to go with the second one, but what I'll do is to send out within the course of the next day or so the material I've received from Simon.
Can I ask, could you express it as whoever we are with? Sababhutesu. So in whatever situation concerning other living beings we are in.
No, yeah, I mean, maybe, but you could always cheat a little bit, because you see, then you could choose who you're going to be with. You can't always choose who you're going to be with.
Yeah, but it says Sababhutesu, so in whatever situation, social situation we are with.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could, but okay, I think we can do that. We can have that as part of the discussion next time after I've sent out the material I've received from Simon. But just look at these verbs. Anurake, what's the mother doing? This is the octative form, third singular octative. Anurake, the mother is looking after her only child. What are we doing? The bhavaye. Okay, cultivate, one should cultivate. What are you cultivating? You're cultivating the manasam. You're cultivating that mindset, that mentality. In here, it refers to this metta of the Brahmahara. So you're not protecting all beings, you're protecting that mindset that you have. You're protecting that ability to dwell in that Brahmavihara.
Yeah, my inclination there is to say you should protect that kind of attitude in whatever. Sababhutesu is almost qualifying the manusam, or the verb. In whatever social situation you are in, you should, which doesn't clash really with whatever you're saying.
No, I think I tend to agree with you. I don't think it does clash. Yeah, I don't think it does. Anyway, let's take this up again after I've sent out the stuff from Simon. Okay then, so just going to recap verse 8 and that. Here we are. So metancha, again, it's the bhavaye, manasam, metancha manasam, bhavaye, let one cultivate, one should cultivate the mettam manasam. Here, metta appears to be operating as an adjective. So metta, with the long a, is on its own a feminine noun. That's how it's most commonly used. But also metta as an adjective means metta full, having metta characterized by metta. And some people when they're signing themselves off on their emails, if they're using Pali. Some people sign off as metena chittena with a metaphor chitta, metena chittena, which I like, which is fine, and doesn't clash with scholarly linguistics. So sabbalokasmin, which, as you know, could equally have been sabbasmin lokasmin for the whole word, sabbalokasmin as a compound. And above, below, and across, udhammadho chitriyancha, asambadham, without obstacle, averam asapattam, without hostility, without rivalry. So, firstly, any questions arising out of that we can deal with? And secondly, then, was there anybody who didn't get a chance to recite it last time round who would like to have the chance now? If there are no takers on either, then we can proceed to, come on, there must be at least one taker. Okay, maybe not, sometimes not.
I'm not sure I did, James. I'll do it if you like.
Okay, please do then, Paladin. Okay.
Mettancha sabba lokasmin manasam bhavaye aparimanam utham adhocha tiriancha asambhatam averam asapattam.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Anyone else? Then we can move on.
Okay, I can have a go.
Okay, Mariano, please do.
Mettancha sabba lokasmin manasam bhavaya parimanam udammadocha tiriyancha asambhadham avaramasapatam.
Right. One interesting point there. In the editions that I have, this M that I've highlighted is actually subdotted. As you've heard me say many times, if this were in regular prose, it's word ending in anuswara immediately followed by a consonant. Sorry, immediately followed by a vowel that would be pronounced as an ordinary M. Averamasapatam. In poetry, you're allowed to, as so often in Pali, I hate to use the word, but there we are, you're allowed to cheat slightly. And if you want to make this now without the subdotted M, with an ordinary M, would be a short syllable. Averamasapatam. But in Pali, but not allowed in Sanskrit, because of the following vowel, you can make that into a long syllable by converting the M into anuswara. Averam masapatam. So if you're just reciting it on your own, it wouldn't matter too much. Of course, if you're chanting in unison, it does matter very much. Otherwise, you get a bit, out of step by a beat. But bear in mind that it has no grammatical significance. It's purely a matter of poetical meter. Okay, so we can go on to Dhammapada. Proceed to Dhammapada, chapter 9, verse 2, I have. Oh, hang on. Do you know what I've done? And none of you corrected me.
James?
Yeah.
Did you say we were going to do verse 9 of the Metta Sutta in your email?
You were a few seconds too late. Do you know what I do? Because what I do with the email that I send out to you all, just so I don't have to scrabble about remembering what to do, I print it out and I have that on top. But what I'd done, I kept the one from the previous week because I'd written down these queries that you raised about Kairata and Diame, and I accidentally left it on top, so I put it like that rather than like that, you see. So I was looking at last week's work. And I did all of that without any of you correcting me. Sorry, chaps. Sorry, chaps. We are meant thank you, Jeremy. We are meant to be doing 27. That's today's number, isn't it? Okay. Sorry. Wednesday, 27th November. Resume Karaniya Metta Sutta, verse 9.
I think we're all just sitting here thinking we got it wrong.
That's very unlike you, Paladin. If you think I've got it wrong, you immediately raise your voice, and a very welcome voice it is as well. I need to be put right. So here we are then. Had we just started this?
I think we were going on to it this week. I think we'd finished the first 8 last time.
Okay. Right. So I'll read it out then. Titan charan nisinova sayanova yavatassa vigatamidhu etang satimadhittaya brahmametam viharam idhamahu. And this M ought to be subdotted. There we are. Etam viharam idhamahu. So Hittam means standing, and is the present participle. And let's go to a new page on the iPad. So sta, it's from our root sta, meaning to stand. And it is in Sanskrit an ordinary class 1 verb, but it's slightly irregular. It's one of the duplicating verbs. So it partially reduplicates the first syllable, but it doesn't reduplicate it in full, which stami, but tishtami. Look at Sanskrit now, then we'll go to Pali. So I stand is tishtami, and then tishtasi, and he stands. Sorry. Tishtati. Now, they stand. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my electronic pen. They stand is tishtanti. In Pali, and this is all because of this reduplicating first syllable, or reduplicating only syllable, tishtanti. In Pali, as you would completely expect, by regular phonetic mutation, in Pali, it is tishtanti. They stand. When you're making your present participle, it's very simple. All you do is take the third person plural, the they, and that's your base for your present participle. Tishtant. So it makes a nominative. Tishtan. Genitive. Look, all of this is Sanskrit at the moment. Accusative. Tishtan, nominative. Tishtantam, accusative. The instrumental now, remember, it loses the N there. For the rest of the singular, it loses the N, just as the T. So tishtata is the instrumental. The genitive and the ablative, tishtata, dative tishtate, locative tishtati. So from this Sanskrit present participle, we get now to the Pali present participle. And it behaves regularly. Acute nominative singular, tittam, just with the anuswara, and accusative, tittantam. Instrumental tittata. So you see, very closely following the Sanskrit. And I've many times called up for you that comparative table I've done for you on the comparative between Sanskrit and Pali on the present participle ending in ant and adjectives ending in vant, because they decline almost the same with a couple of very small differences. And you get the same from, for example, Bhagavant. In Sanskrit, nominative singular is Bhagavan. In Hindi, it's not Bhagwan, but Bhagavan. Accusative, Bhagavantam. Identical in Sanskrit and Pali. Buddham Bhagavantam Abhipujyeni. Buddham Bhagavantam are identical here in Sanskrit and Pali. So let's now look back into our verse 9. There we have tittang. There we are. There is your present participle. It means standing, while standing. It's the same ending that you get in Latin, ans, antem, antis, and so on, reflected in modern Italian, the ending ante. It's come into English as our endings in ant or ent, supplicant, respondent. It's from that same ending, and that's the same nt as in Latin and back to Sanskrit. So tittan in modern Italian would just be stante. You wouldn't. Yes, Mariano.
A wild thought came into my mind.
A wild thought, surely not Mariano, not you. Not il signor Marcicaya. Okay.
I wonder whether anti comes from there, antecedent, standing before something, or does it at all?
No, I think that's from ante, meaning in front of, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I was wondering whether, originally it come from standing in.
I somehow doubt it, but I'm going to check it, ante.
Thank you. Really wild this time.
But no, I don't think it could. In fact, even in modern Spanish, you have ante, meaning in somebody's presence.
Yeah.
So ante. No, let me check that. I'll make a note to check the etymology.
Thank you.
So tittang and charan, exactly the same. It's just the masculine singular nominative. Charati, third person plural, they walk. So charan means while walking. Tittang while standing, charan while walking. Nisinno, that actually is a past participle, not a present. So that's a past participle, and just behaves like an ordinary akaranta shabda, a word ending in a short a. Note that that sad is slightly irregular. You've got the present. You've got the root sad, and you've got the present tense, present stem seed, seedati, sad, seedati. In Sanskrit, the past participle, it's one of these past participles that ends in a na rather than a ta. That's where you get, in Sanskrit it would be sanna, but in Pali it's become sinna. So nisinna, sitting down. But in fact, it's a past participle, so you can almost say sat. Sayano, from the root sheti in Sanskrit, si seti in Pali, sayano. The ano ending is an alternative form of the present, less used form of the present participial ending in Pali. So you could have said sayang, like titang charan sayan. But the alternative form, sayano, just means lying down. So this means standing, walking, seated, lying down is what these four words mean. Yavata means to the extent that, literally by which, or by how much. So yo and yad mean which. Yavat means how much. And you have in Latin tantum and quantum. Tantum quantum in Sanskrit is tavat yavat. So yavata is the same as in Latin, be quanto, by how much. So yavatassa, by how much. And that means to the extent that. But you can see why that means yavata, by how much. So to the extent that one is vigata midho. Have I translated midho here? Stiffness or torpor, yeah. It here means stiffness or torpor of mind, mental agility. If your mind's all coalescing into a kind of a stiff, sludgy substance that occasionally happens. So long as you... Was that an observation you wish to make, Mariano? We're all in the same boat. Well, some of us anyway. Simon, please.
When would you use Yavata, and when would you just use Yava? Because when I originally saw this, I thought it was just Yava insofar as, and then a T there to separate the vowels. He or it would be. What's the difference between Yava and Yavata?
I think they're just grammatical variants. It's an interesting point you raised there, because I think actually, so yeah, but that, okay. If it were yavat asa, you tend to find, if it's just going to be yava asa, then the insert vowel in Pali would tend to be a D, not a T.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's impossible that it should be a T, but yavata asa makes perfect grammatical sense. And to choose the alternative explanation, you would be having to import an irregularity and insert vowel with a T. And for example, in the word, in samma, often translated as right, in samma ditti. Let me call up iPad again, show you what I mean. So we have the Dhammo has been akato. I think actually the Pali used the short long other akato, meaning proclaimed. The akato Dhammo, proclaimed, is the Dhamma. And you see, I forget which chant it's in. Instead of Samma akato Dhammo, you make a sandhi out of it and put sammadakato. So samma, it's that someone samyak in Sanskrit becomes samma in Pali, and then sammadakato. You can make a sandhi out of it, but very irregularly. But Pali doesn't mind being a bit irregularly. It inserts a d as the sandhi vowel. In Sanskrit, it will be samyagakyato, the k becoming a samyagakyato, but sammadakato. You do quite often find this d insert in Pali as your sandhi consonant to avoid a hiatus. Typically, you'll find an M or a D serves that purpose in Pali. I cannot remember, Simon, seeing a case where I've seen a T there.
I mean, normally we see in following clauses like yava tava, to the extent that he does this, he does that. Is there a tavata as well?
There would be, yeah. So yavata tavata, just as yata tata, yed tad, yavata tavata. So there would be exact correlatives there, just like yata tata.
And the ta has nothing to do with kind of making it abstract, like to the the extentness, or however you would say it. It's just
No, it wouldn't be. Ingenious idea, but no, this is, I'm very firmly, again, I might have to climb down in a week's time, but at the moment I very firmly stand as this being an instrumental. So literally, by how much, in Latin would be quanto, by how much, means the extent to which. So I'm fairly convinced, but as old age increases, I'm becoming less and less willing to die on the barricades for these views. So I might climb down from that, but at the moment, I will climb down, but I'm going to need a very good reason to do it as to why we should interpret yavata as anything but the instrumental.
Can I ask something?
Sorry, and one point, and again, Simon, if the yavata, if you just had the ta there as a non, first of all, I'm not sure the word exists, but even so, you'd want an instrumental or an accusative there. I don't think you would just have a nominative there. Yavata as the vigatamido. It just wouldn't fit syntactically.
when you get just yava tava, is that nominative, or why is yavata instrumental? I can understand the function it has in the sentence. If you just have yava this, tava that, as
yeah, I mean you can have that as a kind of, I would categorize that as an adverbial neuter.
Right. Okay.
But okay.
James, one of the online dictionaries gives yavata as ablative of yavant in adverb use, compares it, I think you just mentioned it, to tavata, tavata.
Yeah. Okay. So, in fact, yeah, in the pronominal declension of the ant, the ta can stand as an ablative as well as an instrumental. Which online dictionary is that, Jeremy?
Sorry, I'll just go to the top of it. It's the one OBO dot Geno, GNAOAUD. So Pali Text Society, Pali English Dictionary.
Okay, oh right, yeah. I mean that's what I'm looking at now. Let me just. Here we are. Yes. How far do I have to scroll down to get it? Sorry, here we are. How far do, oops.
I just searched under, : Java.
Yeah. So, oh, hang on. Uh-oh. Oh, here we are. Here we are. It was just giving me a problem. Here we are. Javat. Neutral of Javant used as an, okay.
And then there's a separate entry for Yavatar.
Oh, there's a separate entry, isn't there?
So, sort of next one there.
Yavatar, okay. Here we are, Yavatar, indeclinable, and does it say to the extent that, yeah. As far as, like as, okay. Okay, so it's giving it as the ablative. Okay, it could be the ablative or the instrumental here.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, I mean, I'm not going to stand here and say the PTS dictionary and Norman are wrong about that, but to treat that, okay, it's called an indeclinable, that's fine, but in indeclinable, it's actually it's either an ablative or an instrumental or both from Yavat. It kind of gels better with me to look at it as an instrumental, that it doesn't, I mean, by the extent that, to the extent that. But I don't think it makes any practical difference. So anyway, you can treat it as an indeclinable to the extent that so far as. And the more syntactically minded of you can then try and work it out in your minds whether we should be treating it as an instrumental or an ablative. I feel inclined to treat it as an instrumental, but I'm not going to fight those who treat it as an ablative. So, okay, so vigata, you know that one, that's very simply vigata, literally gone away. One who's mudha, one whose sense of sloth and torpor and mental heaviness is vigata. So you very often see this construction, the vigata, followed by some kind of quality, usually an undesirable one. If you are vigata kilesa, for example, one whose klesas, one whose defilements have gone away. Etang satyamadhitaya brahmametam viharam idamahu. Ahu, that is Pali, broadly speaking, okay, Sanskrit has got a perfect tense of the verb with a reduplication, so ahu becomes ahu, meaning to say. The perfect tense has virtually disappeared out of Pali, but there are just a few rare, I mean, just a couple of verbs that still retain it, just survivals from Vedic. Ahu, he has said, or they have said, is one of them. So just treat it as a bit of an irregular Pali verb, a survival from the Sanskrit perfect tense. The other one is babhuva, babhuvan. He, she, or it was. So this one treated as a slight outlier in verbal forms, a survival from Vedic. Ahu, they have said, or it is said. So etang setin aditya. So adhitthana in Pali, adhitthana in Sanskrit. It's often translated as resolve. You make your, before entering into a practice or entering into anything, you create your adhitthana, your resolve to do it. Let me just call it up in the dictionary. So translated by, oops. Sorry, I've just got to boom, 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 boom. The adhitthana is adhi and sthana. Sthana, Pali thana, meaning standing or a place. It's a statio in Latin. French, we have station in English, stazione in Italian. Your station, the place where you stand.
There is a retreat center of the Triratna organization called Adhisthana.
And Adhisthana, okay, right. So
now I
right.
understand.
That's it then. It's the same word. So Adhisthana in Sanskrit, Adhitthana in Pali. If you have the idea of standing to, you're standing there attending to it. In fact, in old military terms, if you're standing to, it's the next stage down from kind of alert or attack. You're standing to in readiness to do something. But it's there. It translates as decision, resolution. It also means to set something up as in a verbal form, to set something up as your resolution. So have it standing. Here we are. It's the previous one. Adhittati or adhittati, adhishtati, to stand to on something, is then to concentrate or fix one's attention on. But within, for example, Buddhist practice, meditation practice, it normally has the positive connotation of making the, fixing your resolve on something. And we see it can have its pejorative sense as well. In a bad sense, obstinacy and prejudice. Well, you can see why. Sticking to your views. So here then it means fixing it as a settled thing. So maintaining, translated as maintaining. So fixing, establishing. Etam satim adhiteya. One should maintain this sati, this mindfulness. Brahmametam viharam idhamahu. So idham, idham has the sense of right here, and often it means a broader sense of in this present life. So right here and now, I've translated as this. It's here in this life. They call it I think it's more in this life rather than this. Right here it is the, rather than going to a Brahma Loka after death, to have a Brahma Vihara, which means a divine dwelling, maintaining this mindfulness, this metta mindfulness, this they call the divine abiding right here in this life. But as I said, stated in the perfect tense, it has been called, therefore it is said to be. And it's in the accusative, Brahmam etam viharam ahu, they have said it, meaning they have said it to be.
James.
Or declared it. Simon, please.
when you have idha, often it's when somebody is being instructed, like the Buddha is talking to somebody, and we'll often say idha, then their name. Does that normally just mean here in this case, like what you're talking about, or does it always mean in this world? You know, here and now.
Okay. It had generally just it started off life meaning here, itha. And further, you can have a comparative form, idhara, meaning further towards here. And idhara turns up in English as hither. So idhara, idha, and hither started off life as the same word. So it originally just means here, and then by extension here, as opposed to idhamva, huramva in the present life or in the afterlife. And when you're starting off a speech, idha, it's almost like calling the meeting to order. Idha, listen here, and it can mean then in this case on this point, and it's often just kind of an infill word. It's often given as a little indication that what is about to be said is a little bit important. Idha, on this point, so it doesn't actually alter the meaning, but it is just a kind of almost like a modal particle, it's like a calling to attention.
Is it related at all to Iha Shariputra in the Heart Sutra?
Iha. Oh, it is, yes, it is.
Okay.
And because you have iha and idha as well. There are several words where you have a voiced aspirate like da, ba, ga, which then just retain in other forms retain the aspiration only. So idha, iha. And you find it, for example, more commonly between Sanskrit and Pali. For example, in Sanskrit, laghu, spelled L-A-G-H-U, laghu meaning light. And you find lahu in Pali. But sometimes you find it within Sanskrit. So iha, originally idha, but iha is a valid form in Sanskrit. So it's the laghu, lahu, the g then becomes a v in Latin, levity, levis, but the g or j comes back in Italian to leggero. So laghu, lahu, levis, leggero, and our English word light, L-I-G-H-E, meaning not heavy, and all this it's the etymologically the same word. But you're right, Mariano. So iha is the same word as idha.
Thank you.
James, could I ask something?
Please, Roger.
You have sort of mindfulness described as a Brahmavihara here, and the kind of classification that I remember of the 4 Brahmaviharas doesn't include mindfulness.
It doesn't. You're absolutely right. I think the explanation is, and my explanation here isn't any better than anyone else's, so I invite contributions from all of you. Remember that the word sati, let me just call up iPad again, sati in Pali, it's from the root smri, meaning to remember. There's an ordinary verb of the language. Well, I can't remember his telephone number, you know. It's an ordinary verb of the language. Smarati. So smarati in Sanskrit, which would be sarati in Pali. Not to be confused with the other verb, sarati, as in sangsarati, goes around in samsara. Coincidentally, they look the same. They're not the same verb. Now, we can make a verbal noun by the addition of ti. So in Sanskrit, smriti means memory, remembering. There's a series of Hindu scriptures called the Smritaya, the Smritis, the remembered things. And by regular phonetic mutation, Smriti becomes Sati in Pali. As I said, it started off life with the ordinary meaning of remembering something. Sorry. Oh, God. Oh. Sorry about that. I'm in the middle of teaching, Andreas. I'll call you back. Well, yes, so sati started off life just meaning remembering, and then it has this extended meaning, specifically within Buddhism, of mindfulness. But here, in the present case, hang on, where are we? I think it probably, I don't think he's attempting to say here that sati is one of the Brahma viharas. I think here, sati is actually being used in the broader sense. Maintain that, keep this in your mind. Always maintain the memory of metta in your mind.
James?
I have a feeling that's what it means here. But you're right to point that out, Roger. It's not one of the Brahma viharas. Jeremy, please.
Yes, I mean, I was wondering exactly the same point. I just wondered whether, sort of grammatically, when it says etam satim, whether it could be referring back to the previous verse, which does then cover or refer to a meta full mind, meta manasam. I just wondered if that would work or not.
So the previous verse,
or all the previous verses, it's kind of saying hold in your mind all these
that's right.
reflections about metta, because metta is the divine abiding that we're being invited to remember or recollect.
Yeah, I would say, to be a diplomat, I would say a combination of, of a wonderful coalescence of Jeremy's point and Paladin's as well. I think that the sati here refers to hold all of this. Keep all of this in your mind. So using the sati as just a much in its much more older, broader sense than the technical sati. Mariano.
Yeah, there is something which grates with me.
Oh.
You either say, if you got a list, you say a va after each item or at the end of it.
Yeah.
Is there by reason of meter, poetic reasons, why do we have only two there, and not just the last one? So titam charam nisinova sayanova,
He was short of a couple of long syllables that he needed to complete the verse. You could have
I was wondering, but it looks longer than the one underneath.
Okay. He could have said titamba charamba grammatically correctly, wouldn't fit the meter, of course. Titamba charamba nisinova sayanova. Or he could have just put one or two or three or four. It's optional. I mean,
it's optional that you can have as many as you want, or I thought it was either after each item you got a va or at the end of the list. But you're saying you can place in whatever you want or wherever.
If you're a Pali poet, you can. Right. I have a feeling, Mariano, that you might, if it's a rule at all, I'm going to check that. There are repetitions of va. If there is a rule at all, it may be that it's observed in prose rather than poetry. In poetry, you've got more latitude. I mean, looking across just across the names on the screen, I could say Keith, Teresa, and Judith, or Keith and Teresa, Judith and Srinamala, or Roger, Christine, and Jeremy, or whether Roger, Christine, or whether Jeremy. You see, you've got a little bit of latitude
Yeah,
there.
I thought, the first three might somehow be grouped together because and then the other one slightly different, but it doesn't make sense in this case.
No, I think it's just it's optional. Tiktamba, Charamba, Nisinova, Sayanova would have been correct. It doesn't grate with me, and I'm not shocked to see what's written here.
James, why one past participle and three present ones? Because that would read funny in English, wouldn't it, if we did that?
Why one past participle and three present ones?
Yeah, if we said in English, seat, standing, walking, sat, or lying down, it would sound a bit odd.
Walking, saying sat or lying.
Feels a bit off. Is that just another thing for meter again? Is it just less of a thing?
It might be meter. Okay. If you look at charam, okay, that's the present participle. It means while performing the act of walking, in the course of walking. The other three are actually static. Tiktang, that's an interesting, I hadn't spotted that point myself. Tiktang is actually a present participle, and it could mean in the act of standing up or while stood. But if I was saying, what's the best way of saying in the act of standing up, and the best way of saying stood while standing, or stood there, I would have said tiktang. I would tended to say would mean the actual movement of rising, the movement of getting from sitting to standing, as an act, as a verb, not a stative verb, but a verb describing an action. I think it might have been more natural. Interesting point you've raised there, Pearl. It might have been more natural to use the past participle, just be tito, Sanskrit tita, to mean stood. In other words, you're static. Well, static means static rather than moving. Again, it might just be to do with the meter. Sayanova, difficult to say whether that is. No, actually, come to think of it, standing up, if you want to talk about the motion of standing up, you tend to put the ut in front of it, uttitam, while in the act of standing up. So I would say tiktang then means standing in the sense of static. But you could equally have put, in prose, it would have been normal to put, though he was stood there, pito ahosi. He was stood there.
Might just look in the suttas or in the Visuddhimagga and see what phrases get used there, whether this is a poetical thing or whether this is the normal way of putting the four different ways of,
If you could check that for me, now that you can find your way around the Pali text of the Visuddhimagga, Paladin. In ordinary prose, then it would be. I would have expected to see tito, meaning stood, as a static thing.
I'm curious now. I'm going to go and try. I'll try and find it.
Please do. Report to me with your findings. We'll pass it on to the group.
Before I go, I am more at ease now because I think Titam Charam Nisino is daily activities. Sayano during the night. So now I accept the two vas.
I'm so glad you accepted. Mariano has accepted the way that the poet put it.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, are you leaving us now, Mariano? Okay. I'm sorry, Jeremy. You were about to.
Yeah, I just wondered. You said it's not static, and in terms of walking meditation, you sort of walk your however long 10 paces, and then you stand, but then you turn. You turn slowly to then walk back the other way. And so then, so standing is not it's not stood. Stood wouldn't work there. There is an active sort of element to the standing, as it were.
Oh, I see what you mean, because you are standing, but you are slowly turning to walk back along your Jankama.
Exactly, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm just a little bit fearful that we're reading a bit more into it than even the poet intended. Christine.
I'm going to throw in something here as someone who's very conscious of English grammar. Okay, the past continuous is he was standing.
Yes.
It's only in the last few years that, and this always sort of riles me somewhat, he was stood in the corner, for example. Yeah. I don't like the use of stood, which I see as a simple past, you know, to stand, stood. He was standing, he is standing. That's just me being finicky.
No, it's not. I mean,
that was kind of what was behind my question, Christian.
Okay.
It'd be wrong in English, wouldn't it? It would feel wrong in English to say it.
Yeah, it
would feel. It's what everybody's doing now, because I think they're so jolly lazy. They're trying to wipe out continuous tenses.
That's right.
And I happen to think they work, as in he is walking.
As a continuous thing. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with you, just as a matter of my own professional self-protection of my professional reputation, particularly as there's a fellow lawyer here. Never in a million years in writing a formal legal advice would I say that he was stood. I say he was standing. The only reason I descend to saying he was stood and he was sat is simply I descend into a modern colloquial. I know I have an aversion to it, but I descend into that modern colloquial because in fact it's perfectly good, stylistically good grammar in Sanskrit and Pali to say he was stood and he was sat. He was titro nisimno. It's perfectly good Sanskrit.
And of course, language is changing, and it's what changes, I guess, you feel comfortable with. Even though,
exactly,
no, they are. It is changing, you know.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I get quite shocked by hearing these. Even my own children. How are you? I'm good. I'm not asking about your moral qualities. I'm inquiring after your state of health. I am well, not I am good. But no, I am good. And my bad for my fault. But well.
I think that's an Americanism. That one.
It is an American, but like so many Americanisms, it comes in and sticks with us. Sorry, Simon, just seen your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just to follow on from Paladin's point, the finding these four postures elsewhere, it's exactly the same in the Satipatthana Sutta. We have Sayano, Nisinno, and Titam. The only difference is that charam is gachanti, so it's gachanto in that one.
Okay, right. Yeah, so the okay, fine. Well, just valid alternatives. I mean, as you know, well, gacchati is a more general verb meaning to go, whereas char is more specifically walking. But okay, thanks for finding us. So can you just say again what you found there, Simon?
That's in the Satipatthana Sutta, from memory. Because there are the four postures. He's mindful of, extending his arm, excreting, eating, chewing, lifting, etc. In the Satipatthana Sutta, mindfulness of the body, the first of the four tetrads. And also the Titam is quite right. It's not get in the process of getting up. It's just standing there.
As a static thing.
I mean, to stand up is upatahati or upatati.
Yeah. That's right. So that was, as I mentioned earlier, I'm glad you spotted that, Simon. So if the talk about the act of standing up, altering the position of your body, you would have the ut in front of it as the up.
Rising.
James, could I just clarify? The first two are present participle. Nicino is a past participle, and the final one is a present participle.
That is correct.
Okay.
Incidentally, as you'll probably have seen well, several times from this comparative table of present participles that I occasionally flash up in front of you, this tittam is the short form. It could equally correctly be in Pali, but not in Sanskrit, tittanto, and the charam could equally correctly be charanto. But here, just the short form with the consonantal declensional form of the present participle is used here, which incidentally is the only one that's correct in Sanskrit. Pali allows both. And the nisinno, you might recognize this in the Upanishads, the Upanishad, the sad to sit, nishad, the in Sanskrit becoming a sh before the preceding vowel e, nishad to sit down, Upanishad to approach and sit down. So the Upanishads are simply, it's the name of like a gathering where the disciples upa approach him and ni sidanti, upa ni shidanti, they approach and sit down. So that's where we get the word the Upanishads. So before we wind up for this one, we've got time for a couple of recitals. In doing the recitals, do try, this is a slight bit of a tongue twister for European speakers. Somebody like Sri Animala will have no problem at all with it, because you've got the dental da, da, and you've got the rectal effects da, 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 adjacent in the same word. Not only is it adjacent, but it's doubled and aspirated. Tit tongue, tit tongue. Can we start with you, Sri Animala? And rather than I want you to, I want you to recite the whole verse, but to start with, can you just say that first word?
Tittam.
Say again.
Tittam.
Tittam. Right. Okay. So okay. Thank you then. So proceed now with the whole verse, Shiranimala, if you would.
Tittam charam nisinno va sayano va chavatassa vigatamiddo etam satim aditteya brahmam etam viharam idam mahu.
Wonderful, thank you. Of course, we've got it twice because we've got this again. I'm looking at the Devanagari. We've got the double TH there. It's from that same root, of course. It's the star from that same root. Great, thanks, Keith. You're next. You're next in the gallery.
Okay. Titang charang nisinova sayanava yavatasta itang satin.
Yavatasa, you missed out the last two words. We get them in.
Oh, so I did. Sorry, I jumped line. Yeah, beg your pardon. Yavatasa vigata nito. Etang satim aditeya ramang etang viharam idang ahu.
Okay, Keith, but you have fallen away slightly from that system you developed earlier. I think you described as the Morse code system, with a very, very distinct quantities, they call it quantities, given to the shorten. So titang charan nisinova sayanova yavatatha vigata midho. Could you try it with that very distinct separation of light syllables and heavy syllables, of which you are the acknowledged expert in the group?
Is that better?
Sorry?
Is that better to have the short syllables very short?
Well, not very sure. They've got to be right. But the way you were doing it was kind of a useful emphasis on them. But you were when you recited them, I noticed a slight blurring, a slight blurring of them. I thought, that's not like Keith.
No, you're quite right. I took the dots away.
Okay. That explains it then. Do you want to try once more with the first line?
Okay. Titang Charang Nisinova Sayanava Yavatatsa Vigata Mito.
Yes, that was correct. All of the quantities, using quantities in the poetic meter sense were exactly right there. Great. So we have just one more before we wind up, and everyone else will get a chance next time round. So Teresa, you are next on the gallery, so we can wind up with your recitation.
Tatam karam nisino va sayano va yavatassa vigata mito etang satim aditetea aditetea Brahman etam viharam etam ahu.
Okay, just the adhiteya.
Aviteya.
That was very good. And you just made one lapse in the first line. You pronounced that as if you were reciting Irish poetry. It's a charan. Okay, great. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in a week's time. And of course, some of you in three-quarters of an hour. Okay. Thanks very much. Then. Thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thanks,
Thank
James.
you, James.
Thank you then. Bye.